Hey everybody, this is my 40 breeder, and I was just popping in, checking on everybody this afternoon, and I noticed something about this tank that I want to talk about real quick while I'm thinking about it. And what I noticed was from the other side of the room, I noticed how brightly lit up that rock is. Now the camera's washing out because it's got too much light on it, but that's actually a nice tan, sort of earth tone colored rock. It's a really pretty color. And then I've got other stuff in there. In fact, it's very similar to that rock right there. If you actually looked at this tank without the woodwork in it, you'll see that the rocks sort of create this sort of faux formation in there, very akin to what you might see in the natural landscape around here. I've also created a few caves and nooks and crannies and places to hide, along with all the woodwork and everything in there. So what caught my eye was how bright and shiny and clean that rock is. And it's been just completely covered with algae and green growth and everything up until very recently. And what I did was I cut way back on the amount of algae wafers I've been putting in this tank. The key feature fish in this tank is my Crenocycla regani. You can see right there, it's a female. I also have a few Siamese algae eaters who do a great job keeping the hair algae and the shaggier stuff in check. But when it comes to scraping surfaces clean, I've got a couple of rubber lips in this tank. And as long as I was feeding them the algae wafers and they were getting nice, easy food, they weren't doing a whole lot in the way of keeping the tank clean, which is what I hired them for. And so I'm not feeding them algae wafers. I'm just not feeding them as much algae wafers as I used to. Maybe once a week now I'll throw some algae wafers in there. Otherwise I just let the fish forage in the tank naturally, and you can see the difference it's making. If you look at the wood, you can see how that's all starting to get scraped clean, and you can see the wood showing through again. You can see how clean the rocks are, even all the way in the back there. You can see how it looks like brand new rocks that I just put in the tank. You can even see the difference between where they have scraped and where they haven't scraped, where the roots are touching and they don't scrape up to where the roots are. You can see how green all that is. So that's a Rubber Lip Pleco doing that. Well, it's a couple of them in this tank, but that's what it is. They're Rubber Lip Plecos. You can see how beautiful that wood is. And even the surface of the leaves are starting to get clearer and clearer. Less and less of that brown cyanobacteria type growth growing on it. The glass on this tank is now fairly clean, and the reason I actually stopped feeding them the algae wafers was because I noticed that the bottom of the tank was completely green. It just had a carpet. All of it looked like this, and now, not saying that's necessarily good, there's still a lot of algae growing on the gravel down there, but you can see the gravel, and you can see that it's black gravel and not just this weird. It looked like I put gravel in the tank before and then spray painted it green. And it doesn't look like that anymore. And of course the rocks look like I'd spray painted them green. Everything in this tank was just green. And all I did was cut back on how many algae wafers I was putting in this tank. And you can see what it looks like now. I will also say I cut back on how many algae wafers I'm putting in this tank. And while we'll have to fight the glare a little bit, see how nice and clean that rock is. You can see the face of that rock is nice and clean now. That woodwork has been scraped nice and clean. Look at all that clean woodwork and rocks down here. You can see all that brand new scraping on the wood right there. So it is important to feed your, I'll say, algae eating fish, and I'll say that whether it's a guppy or a platy, a molly, any of those type algae eating fish, or if it's the Aufwuchs grazing type fish, like the sucker type fish that actually scrape surfaces clean. It is important to make sure they get a well-balanced diet. You can't rely on them only eating the algae in your tank and staying healthy, but you have to find that balance. If you actually feed them too much, like I've been doing, not only are you contributing extra nutrients to the tank, which makes it all the more likely to grow algae in the tank, but you're also giving them a nice, easy access food source that's going to prevent them from wasting a lot of energy scraping and foraging. So keeping them just on the cusp of being hungry is where you want to try to find that balance. When you see the stuff starting to grow and accumulate in your tank, you cut back on the feeding a little bit maybe. When the tank's nice and clean and there's nothing really left for them to scrape or eat, you can step it up and feed them a little more. But it will definitely impact how much of an effect they have on your tank when you really get in there and feed them a lot. So there you go, everybody. Just today's observation on what I was thinking about when I walked in here. We'll see what we got going on later. So make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss anything. You never know what it's going to be with me. Thanks for watching this one. And we will leave you here with my 125-gallon New World tank. So thanks again. I'll see you real soon in the next one.